I always called it bleep bloop music.
Bleep bloop. Okay. Yeah. Squick squawk, bleep bloop. So that was the East Coast, West Coast problem.
I guess so.
There.
Yeah. Hello humans. Welcome to Humans of Classical Music. I am here today with flutist extraordinaire Lindsey Goodman, and we're going to talk about what it means to be a musician and a human.
Sounds great.
All right. When and how did you realize you wanted to be a musician?
Well, my earliest memories are actually of my dad playing the flute to me. When I was a very small child, he would play the flute for me sometimes to put me to sleep at night. And I remember being really fascinated by the sound of the flute and just really wanting to try it. And, you know, being a great father, he was handing me the head joint and saying, here, give this a whirl. So I always say that the flute chose me, I didn't choose it. And I feel like the life was chosen from that point on.
For me, it was actually really similar. My father used to sing hymns to my sister and me to put us to sleep at night. And then also he would play the piano and I would crawl under the bench and listen fascinatedly. And my sister would have piano lessons at our house. The teacher would come to our house. She's 7 years older than me. So she would be sitting having her piano lesson. I would crawl under the piano bench and hide and listen. And they would see me under there, they would shoo me away. I remember they would shoo me out of the room and I would sneak back in. So it became this sort of forbidden fruit thing, like, ooh, the piano is really cool and I have to find a way to do it because they're telling me I can't. So yeah, I just never seriously wanted to do anything else.
I relate to that,
yeah.
For sure.
Describe a moment in your life that you consider a turning point.
There were a couple musical turning points because my musical life is fairly diverse and I'm really grateful for that. I remember being 15, I think, when I auditioned for the Youngstown Symphony Youth Orchestra in Ohio, and I remember going to my very first orchestra rehearsal and being surrounded by the sounds of strings for the first time and playing master composers for the first time. I remember we were playing the Berceuse finale to Firebird. I came home from that rehearsal and I said to my parents, I want to be an orchestral musician. So one rehearsal and done, and I'm really lucky I am that as part of my career now. And then there was another turning point for me. I think I was probably just a year older, probably when I was 16. My high school flute teacher, this wonderful woman, Lori Turk, she gave me such a great foundation, and her husband, John Turk, is a fairly famous tubist, actually. And I remember he was giving a recital of some new works for tuba, and she warned me, she said, this is going to be some squick squawk music. And there seemed, so similar to your story, something so alluring of this forbidden fruit, like, ooh, squick squawk music, I totally shouldn't be interested in that. And I became really fascinated with the idea of new music, of weird sounds, of things I wasn't supposed to do with the flute. And then another big part of my professional career has been doing new music. So those were two really important turning points when I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm. So for me, there are a few different things. One was the day I met my husband, for sure, because it was like as soon as he sat down at the table where we first met, it was like, oh yeah, that's it. The other one, I think it was when I was an undergraduate, and I went into undergraduate just thinking I was going to be a pianist.
Okay.
But then all my friends were taking composition classes, so I thought, let me check that out and see what that's like. And the first time someone else played music that I had written, it was this feeling of power in a way, but also humility, because it was a big responsibility to tell them what to do on their instrument and have them do it, and to write music for an instrument that I didn't play, which was the next best thing to playing it.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's really inspiring. Here, I'm going to ask you this question next.
Sure.
So what's the greatest obstacle you've had to overcome?
Imposter syndrome.
Can we both sign up for that one?
And I am still overcoming it. It's almost like an everyday thing.
Absolutely.
Why is that?
I don't know, because I suffer from some of those same feelings. I think it's because, at least for me, you know, every time I pick up my flute to do my job, it's the same action I did when I was 3 or 4 picking up the flute that my dad would offer me. And so part of me is still that age of a beginner or a young student or an undergraduate or a young professional. So because that sensation of doing something with my instrument has been with me nearly my entire life, it's hard to shake the idea that, oh, now I'm a mid-career musician and I have something more to offer. Part of me, I think, will still always be the scared little girl at my first recital.
Wow. being a composer, I feel like there's this archetype of the great genius composer that still haunts us all, even in the 21st century. To me, it's still like Beethoven, the lone genius who suffers in solitude and then brings his work out into the world. The way that I operate as a composer is different. There's definitely a sense of working in solitude, but then there's also having to work with people and wanting to respond to the world around me, which I think Beethoven actually did too. We just don't think about it as much.
Right.
So the role model for me feels like something that's very different from who I am.
Plus, you're also not a dead European man.
Yes.
In case anyone has not noticed.
That's right. Very much alive, and a chick. So, one of the reasons why I wanted to start this series is that I think that a lot of people who don't know a lot about classical music still definitely have that image that classical musicians are these different creatures who do these amazing things, and we do, but we're also human.
Absolutely.
So it's something we wrestle with, but also I think need to celebrate.
Amen.
So if we played the icebreaker game, 2 Truths and a Lie, what true thing about you would you say to fool people?
I think the lie I would try to sell you would be that I once had a serious McDonald's addiction.
So you would say something like, I'm a gluten-free vegan chef now,
Yes.
and I once had a serious McDonald's addiction.
Absolutely.
People would say, no, you didn't.
Absolutely. And it would absolutely be true. Both of them would be.
When was the last time you ate at a McDonald's?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm celebrating 4 years as vegan this month, so probably 4 years and 1 month ago. Terribly enough.
So for me, that icebreaker game is, I have a built-in advantage because I can say I play the cello, which I don't.
Mm-hmm.
They might think I do. And I have a black belt in karate.
Woohoo!
And everybody thinks, no, you don't. But I actually do. Don't throw a punch at me because I am authorized to defend myself.
Kicking ass
not that I
and
could.
taking names.
Not that I could right now because I'm so out of shape. What is one of your musical guilty pleasures?
I was outed on my musical guilty pleasure the other day. I had a friend in the car, and I recently got one of those cars where it auto plays from your phone, whatever the last thing it is that it played, and suddenly came on Lady Gaga at max volume. I do love Mother Monster.
That is awesome. I think that most classical musicians who are alive nowadays grew up with pop music.
Oh, absolutely.
Kinds of music.
When you think about the number of people who are now inspired by Radiohead, it seems like the new music thing to do, to have a set of songs inspired by Radiohead, for instance.
Yes. Maybe someday you'll get to play with Lady Gaga. How awesome would that be?
Gaga, if you're listening, I am the flutist for you.
That's right. But I grew up with my older siblings listening to their pop music, so it was a little bit before what should have been my time. And one of my real guilty pleasures is I love the Eagles.
Oh, yeah.
I love the Eagles' greatest hits.
I freely admit there is a copy of the Eagles' greatest hits on my CD rack right now.
Right on. Now, I happen to know that you're a big fan of the Dave Matthews Band.
Oh my goodness, yes. I actually had to change into this nice shirt for this interview because I was wearing a DMV shirt before this. My husband and I go and see them every summer.
Has anyone ever given you any flack for that?
There is that sort of image of them being a band for white frat boys in cargo shorts. And you do see a lot of that at their shows, but the thing that I really enjoy about their music is this improvisatory nature. I myself have only recently begun improvising, but I've always been really inspired by the ability of truly virtuosic musicians to do that at the drop of a hat, and they do it all the time. That's really my favorite thing about going to a live show is you never know when there's suddenly going to be a 15-minute version of your favorite song and everyone's going to take a solo, and it's incredible because the people in the audience who are used to a 5-minute or 4-minute radio song eat that up and love that more than anything else on the show too.
If I could wave a magic wand and enable you to play an instrument you don't currently play, which instrument would it be and why?
I'm stealing yours. I've always wanted to be a cellist. It is just the king of instruments in my mind. It's got that amazingly large range, the fact that you never have to breathe, and just to have all that beautiful Bach that's yours on the instrument. I would love to be a cellist.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love the cello. Mine, though, would be viola.
Mm-hmm.
I love the idea of being on the inside in the supporting role and having people tell bad jokes about me. I don't know, all that stuff. No, I just love the deep, dark voice
Absolutely.
the viola has.
It's beautiful.
So now your advantage over cellists is it's a little easier to take your instrument on the airplane.
Absolutely. I'm less likely to have travel difficulties,
Yeah.
but I do frequently have my flute opened at TSA because it's scary looking. It looks like some sort of pipe bomb coming through the X-ray machine.
Right.
So I'm going to ask you this one. What do you love most about music?
I love that it connects you with people. As a composer, I love that the entire world of sound is like my toy box. And I just love that it expresses what we can't put into words. How about you?
Mine's very, very similar. The thing I always think about most in music is that it's a three-pronged approach, right? There's the composer who writes the piece, there's the performer who interprets it, there's the audience that hears it. And if any one of those things isn't present, it's not the full expression of the art. And so it really is about communication across time, across space, across geography, across different human feelings to really express and connect at a deep level about what's true and universal about all of us.
Beautiful. What is your number one interest outside of music?
Well, one of my number one interests is right here. This is Jack the Bichon. It is his 12th birthday.
Hey, happy birthday, Jack.
And he is my best friend. So he's one of my biggest interests outside of music. And I think that my biggest interest in general is trying to lead a healthy and balanced life. I'm not really great at the balance part. I'm trying to get better at it. But I do like to live a really healthy lifestyle. I'm vegan. I work out every day. I try to get enough sleep, and it's becoming increasingly important to me the older I am and the more intense my career gets to make sure I have actual personal connections with people socially, that I have actual connections with my family and my husband, and that I prioritize that just as much as I have prioritized my career and profession for so long.
You are an inspiration, I just have to say.
Thanks.
I see you post on Facebook about your workouts and your recipes and just your career and everything. And it's like, wow, Lindsey Goodman is my spirit animal.
Well, the Bichon's actually my spirit animal, so
Well, there you go.
So, once removed,
So
but
it
thank
all
you. That means a
works
lot
out.
to me.
You introduced me to this idea that I think has gone out of style of planning social gatherings in advance.
Yes.
Putting it in your calendar.
Yes.
And not just having this thing of like, okay, I'll text you and maybe we'll go to something, you know. But like saying, we're going to this concert on this date and we're going to go to this restaurant first and it's 6 weeks from now, but we're doing it. And it really changes your life because then you know what's happening. You don't have this anxiety of like, what am I doing this week? I have no idea. And you have to do that because you play in, what, 5 different orchestras in 3 different states or something?
It's very close to that. I think I've lost count. Please don't quote me.
So your life is scheduled by necessity because of your career. So if you're going to do those things where you get to enjoy yourself with friends, it goes on the calendar.
Absolutely. Because that time will always, if there's any free time on my calendar, it'll get eaten up by practicing or projects, and I want to make sure that I'm investing in the relationships that are really important to me. If music is communication, I can't forget that I can communicate to people face to face too. How about you? What's your answer to what's your number one interest outside of music?
Oh gosh, well nowadays I would say it's vegetable gardening.
Yep.
Because I have a rather extensive vegetable garden that I inherited from the previous owner of our house, and it's been really nice this summer. I'm actually afraid when I go to the grocery store that people look at my cart and judge me because there are no vegetables in it. But it's like, no, wait, I can explain, like, we're growing them all at home. It's just so cool to walk out my back door and get food from my yard.
It's really amazing. And I've been the grateful recipient of some of that food, and it's delicious.
And, you know, at the beginning of spring, you put seeds in the ground, and then a month later, you come back and there's food. It's like
magic.
Magic, it is. It's totally magic.
It sounds to me like for you, it's also just another way of creating, right? Because, okay, so you put seeds in the ground, and then you go out later and there's food. Now, there's not as much active time for you in between, but like when you go to write a new piece, you know, you say, okay, here's the seeds of an idea, and then through a lot of hard work and toil and heartbreak and hardship, you come back and then there's musical food.
That's very
a little
true.
more involved. And for those of you who don't know, I've been the wonderful recipient not only of food from your garden, but your musical food too, because you wrote this amazing piece for me called Demon Daemon, which is for solo flute. So, well, take me through the process of planting that garden, as it were.
Yeah, well, I love that you bring up that metaphor, because one of the things with the garden is you don't always know exactly what you're going to get. I went and bought some seedlings that said they were Napa cabbage, and I brought you some of this. What came up was not like the Napa cabbage that you get in the grocery store. It was this other kind of vaguely mustardy green vegetable, and it was delicious.
It was.
And you wouldn't find it in the grocery store.
Right.
So that was really neat. And I promise this relates to the question you asked me. So when I write a piece of music, one of the things that I find really cool is that the players will bring something to it and find something in it that I didn't realize was there. And that's amazing to me. You know, I think that some composers are a lot stricter than I am about, you know, play exactly what I wrote, exactly the way I wrote it. I don't know if it means I'm humble or just lazy, but I'm like, hey, if you got an idea for how to do it, by all means, I want to hear it. It's because I trust you, right, to know what to do.
Absolutely. And you know, I've worked with composers on all ends of that spectrum, but I think that like for instance on the piece you wrote for me, I mean, you came to me with drafts, you came to me with ideas, you came to me with the thoughts behind the piece and the concepts, you know, and so I felt very involved in the process the entire way along. And so when it came to actually, okay, this is what I think is the final draft, start interpreting it, I felt like I had some ownership from you, some license from you, because I understood enough of your process and what you really wanted to express to feel free to make it my own and take some ownership on it as well. And I mean, it's 100% your piece, but I feel super invested in it. And those sort of experiences are always my favorite with composers, because I have no talent to rub two notes together and make anything happen. So I'm never going to have my name in the upper right corner. But those sort of collaborations make me almost feel like some little part of me does, and it makes me really happy.
How cool is that we can live it vicariously through each other at the same time?
Right.
Though now that you've started this improvisation thing, I don't know.
Oh man.
It's a gateway drug.
It is a gateway drug.
So when I started writing that piece for you, we did have these conversations about what I was thinking about. And something that I've been interested in for a long time is looking at things that aren't quite working right, and kind of bringing the struggle of the practice room into a piece of music, right? Which may be ill-advised, but I enjoy it. So for you to be willing to go there with me and play these phrases that at first kind of sound like, oh, did she just make a mistake? Like something went not quite right there, but it's part of the drama of the piece. It's so generous of you to be willing to do that with me and to make it work and to put the theatricality into it so the audience gets it, I think, pretty much right away that, oh, okay, we're going through this process where you're starting to play, like, and I purposely chose the most iconic flute line ever because I wanted to create this experience of the pressure to be perfect, and what better piece to have the pressure to be perfect on
than Afternoon of a Faun.
Right, than the one that everybody has to play, and there's probably a handful of performances that are the iconic ones that everyone will compare you to. So yeah, I just went ahead and ripped that right off.
Absolutely. And there's something really liberating about that, you know, going back to that spirit of collaborating on pieces. One of the big reasons I commission so much is because part of me is still that little girl with imposter syndrome every time I walk on stage. If I can walk on stage and see a friend there on the music stand, it makes it so much better. And because we had been through this collaboration, because I had trusted you implicitly in what you were writing, you know, it's not scary to go out and have the first thing I do be totally fail at playing Faun in the very first bar of the piece and then throw a physical hissy fit about it. Right. So there's something that's very reassuring about the way that you wrote the piece, that makes taking that feeling of potential failure or ripping away the curtain from the practice room and makes it very comforting, oddly, to share that experience with the audience.
So then the piece doesn't just do that. It doesn't just make you screw up and then have an anxiety attack about it. It goes on from there and has, I think, a happy ending.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Gorgeous, lush, beautiful lyricism, really exploiting what the flute does best.
Thank you. I wanted it to be kind of a whole tour through the emotional range, the musical range. So it has depression and anxiety and failure, and then it also has elation and joy and sadness too. It has some tragedy in there. So it includes it all, and it does it in a mere 7 minutes.
I know, it's really incredible, but well, sometimes we all go through that cycle in 7 minutes, depending on the day and depending on the circumstance. And so to have a microcosm of all the human emotions in one piece, I think it's a real eye-opener, soul opener for an audience. It's one of the reasons I really like sharing it on concerts, and it's certainly very soul cleansing for me in the middle of a concert to play that piece for those reasons too.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for writing me an awesome work.
Thank you for asking me.
You bet.
Lindsey Goodman, thank you very much for talking to me today and for being a human of classical music.
I am a human. I do play classical music. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And thank you, humans, for watching.